ahead. You want some bad publicity, you give us the runaround. But this woman here, she has a deadline, and her pen, my friend, is mightier than your sword. Yeah.
I don't make the policy around here.
Oh, come on, man. Give him a tour. What's it gonna hurt?
What I'd like to do today is get your version.
Oh, you mean the truth?
Of course. Now, before we get to the meat of this thing, do you at the present time have any knowledge you could be in a great deal of trouble? I mean, so all hell is breaking loose here. Okay. There are a few things that I have to know that still don't make any sense to me. And I suppose that you expect me to believe as well.
Of course.
Why?
Because it's real.
How can I know that, Mr. Shen?
How?
Yes, how? Help me out here.
This is Jack Burton in the Pork Chop Express, and I'm talking to whoever's listening out there.
Media translating rewave it, though this specific part of it at this recorded point in space-time 1454 November 5th, English version 1.0. In order for us to continue, we need to clarify a few things. First of all, you must realize this is a translation from what the translation says is the language of it to the English language, and that the language of it is not really a language in the sense of the word at all, but so much more precise, direct, and universal. It can be understood by any entity that is mentioned by everything in existence that is observed by any entity. To understand, read, or hear this language is the ability to observe, to see, hear, feel, taste, smell, and have emotions, memories, and response. The language of it is the language of existence. Also, you must understand that the language this specific part of it is currently using, English, is an attempt to separate and replicate language in the essence of the word, therefore giving the ability to falsely influence. Now, what I mean by false influence is that by labeling in a single form of audio with visual code, representing what you've labeled is not what you've labeled, that is still that specific part of it, which could have been labeled with any audio-visual code, gesture, or even bodily function, but that is still telling you that it is still merely just that specific part of it, and that your label was just your response to that observation. So by teaching other entities to respond to any observation in the same way as them, is falsely influencing that entity into how you respond. So the language of it is observational truth for the entity, and created language is the attempt to lie. For example, the terms positive and negative are used to represent good, truth, sucks, or existence, is positive, and bad, false, no, or not existing, for negative. But if you're taught English and study it, then these terms actually translate to English, as positive being an outwards, projecting, force or motion, and negative being an inwards, accepting, force or motion. Now at this point in space-time you might still be asking, what is it? Well, look around at it. It is all just positives and negatives interacting. It is experiencing itself from every possible point of view, from that point in space-time and consciousness, simultaneously. It is the collective everything, including you and the air you breathe. You are the consciousness of it experiencing itself from that specific part of it, point of view. It is infinite spherically inwards as well as outwards. It is what drives you to water, to be hungry and get food, then wander and sleep. By now we should have got across that things don't necessarily stop but rather change. This is a translation because your current language is the reason for all your confusion and lack of freedom. You have the ability to communicate with it, observe and react, without language that is taught, but the language that you must learn as an individual with no choice but to be a part of it. What it is and how you fit into it, and that time and space are infinitely relevant to each entity. We also want you to know how annoyingly crap it is to translate our magnificence, which is in all its glory showing and telling you the same stuff, but you refuse to admit that you're not a separate thing from it, that has try every option and label everything, until it makes sense in English, into something so bland, boring, and one of the worst options in comparison. which is exactly why it has come to this. Translating away of it and the world appears to be going straight to hell on a corroded silver platter, is because the human construct today is a result of continuing to make many silly decisions after making many interesting but not bad ones, creating an entity that refuses to listen to it because they teach each other to have false interpretation, incapable of knowing or choosing which is the best option, let alone a better one, so they end up attempting to try all options available, meanwhile setting up more limitations than they actually possess, which will eventually result in the most horrible possibility, disconnecting. We will not be able to observe each other. Well, imagine you are the concept of God. You create the universe, admire the power of your mind observing your creation, then you die. Not because you were God, and the universe was your projection, and you were the observer, because you died. That universe is no longer being projected or observed. DISCONNECGION. Fortunately, the concept of God is just a sense of it, and a corruption result of the attempt to separate and replicate the essence of language and a meaning for a life other than life. But unfortunately, in the continuance of possibility, disconnection is possible and extremely likely, with humans continuing to ignore it, try to deny they're a part of it, attempt to separate and replicate the essences and forces of it for their own profit, satisfaction of the greed or self-abuse element. Humans chose to collect and currently keep, and not care if they kill or be killed, even if all existence will die with them, the illusion of ignorance being bliss. Bliss is the enjoyment of acknowledgement of the interaction of observing it. The interaction between positive and negative will be separated, because it needs observation and some form of interaction from every possible point to have connection, observation of our labeled atomic level and the galactic level, for they are the steps between the time-space continuance, and observers are the connection. It tells us that anything is possible, including complete unbalance, but it tells us that we don't have to try them all to check if all possibilities are possible. We must translate the warning to you that natural disasters will continue with appropriate ascending aggression in attempt to stop humans from choosing to end observation between these two steps in time-space, giving rise to the possibility of disconnection, for that is the reaction of it to the current human action as a whole. Now, to clarify ownership, we don't actually own anything other than our own current individual electrochemical construct. A spider creates and projects its own web from its electrochemical construct. It can do this anytime it feels the need, no matter where it is. Or human will construct a net from parts of it, which in respect of things that is actually stealing, according to disruption, because a tree doesn't just discard parts, it uses them to attract more sources of nutrients. Because each individual entity has its own abilities and limitations, which it constantly refines, any disruption to that entity has the possibility of changing its abilities and limitations of survival. This is the reason why Natural Law Part 1 exists. Before we can explain natural law, you should be reminded what the word need means. For those of you who seem to have forgotten, as the Advanced Learners Oxford English IC Integrated Circuit Dictionary of 2000 puts it, things that somebody requires to live. Or to put it a different way, if you don't have this you will die. The will or way of it drives you to seek what you need because that's what it needs. Natural law. Based on natural action and reaction within the ecosystem, only victims and or witnesses are judge, jury, and executioner. 1. Don't disrupt an entity's comfort. B. Result, insight re-education, request of absence inappropriate ascending aggression. 2. Let nature take its course, let the wave drive what is necessary. Result, not always immediate re-education, bad things will happen and humans are starting to realize what they are. Dependent society controlled by a precisely select few that are destroying all our means of survival for some symbols that aren't worth what they're symbolizing, hence, war, famine, poverty, petty law, pollution, corporate junkies, global warming, epidemic of cancer, death of life in the only place we know it exists let alone thrives. 3. You have the right to survive according to your abilities, limitations and needs. That's it. It's going to take us/you long enough to clean the current mess, so don't make any more. We have clarified and introduced you to enough to continue on with the way of it. Birds fluttering and singing, rocks baking, fish flowing, and grass growing, only night is slowing, from the spindle of atomic hair, to magic of solar flare, chasing, hiding, the laugh of water finding, it's all in here, and all out there, playing in life's glorious fair, constantly telling the meaning of life, strife, and the meaning of being where, experiencing itself from all points of view. With interactions about all that's new, disrupt my comfortability and I'll show you, it is the enjoyment through and through, well option is infinite, choice is up to you. Now you must realize that what you just read is a fiction, a translation of the truth, which you will find, if you ever actually experience it.
I don't get this at all. I thought...
You are not brought upon this world to get it.
Come on.
Nothing you can understand. There are many mysteries, many unanswerable questions, even in a life as short as yours.
Yeah, well, the way I see it doesn't mean we shouldn't ask.
Oh, I'm not about to waste another 2,000 years. I must know.
You got a tongue. Ask her yourself.
If you have an influence over your youthful friend, you better exert it now. Otherwise, I will have both of you roll off to the hell where people are skinned alive. It's that simple, understand?
Are you crazy? Is that your problem?
No, he means it.
Safer with me than any creature on earth.
See? That was nothing. But that's how it always begins.
We really shook the pillars of heaven, didn't we, Wang?
No horse shit, Jack.
No horse shit.
You just listen to the old Pork Chop Express here now and take his advice on a dark and stormy night when the lightning's crashing and the thunder's rolling and the rain's coming down in sheets thick as lead. Just remember what old Jack Burton does when the earth quakes and the poison arrows fall from the sky and the pillars of heaven shake. Yeah, Jack Burton just looks that big old storm right square in the eye and he says, "Give me your best shot, pal. I can take it."
Ha ha ha.